Hello everybody, Trey Ratcliff here. Get off me, sandflies. Here in Milford Sound, it's going to be book review number 5. I gotta go put on my jacket, it's too many dang sandflies. My other ones, this is my first 360 one I've done in a while. So if you get tired of looking at me, my wild hair, gotta get a haircut, you can just pan the camera around and look in any old direction. Man, these sandflies. This one is going to be about the great Sarah Breskman Cosme. Strange name, amazing human. Okay, that's better. You see I have my camera set up over there for upcoming sunset photos. I'm here on the South Island of New Zealand. I live a few hours away up in Queenstown. And this is one of my favorite destinations. Now, here in book review number 5, there's going to be shades of the great Dolores Cannon, who along with Sarah Landon and Dolores Cannon are in my pantheon of literary goddesses of this milieu. I don't know where to even start with Sarah. She is kind of the intellectual heir to Dolores, if you will. They write a lot about past lives. They use a special hypnosis technique called QHHT, Quantum Healing Hypnosis Therapy, I think is what it stands for. And what they do is they take common everyday people and they regress them back into a previous life where they go into incredible detail. They speak about their previous lives. Everything from what they're wearing to what they're doing, and these past lives could be like 50 years ago, 100 years ago, thousands, tens of thousands of years ago. And they're just fascinating. So sadly, Dolores died, I don't know how long, 15, 20 years ago? By the way, my hair's a bit crazy. I need to get a haircut. But you know who wouldn't have minded this is Dolores Cannon. She loved getting her hair done, which I think is beautiful and quaint. If you haven't seen her videos, be sure to look up Dolores Cannon. And she actually died on the way to the hairdresser, of all things. It's okay for a unicorn to be vain. But that's really completely unrelated to this video. So Sarah's now written 4 books as of the time of recording this. I have imbibed them, most of them twice. And sometimes Dolores Cannon comes and talks to her through her clients. So Dolores is kind of setting her up with all kinds of different clients that kind of continue Dolores's quest on the search for hidden knowledge. And so I'm not sure what order to recommend Sarah's books in, because they do kind of go on an order. Although you can read them out of order, it doesn't really matter. But they're all related. God, these sandflies, I tell you, these things are evil. Over there, if you spin the camera around, is Bowen Falls. Really cool place. There's a grave at the bottom. But once you get over there, it's rough because this mist just slams you in the face. But it's a good place for photos. So, gosh, where do I start with Sarah? I'm going to recommend her book, the Atlantis book. I think it's called A Hypnotist's Guide to Atlantis. And it's not her first book. And then her second one is about the Sphinx. And her third one is about Avalon. And what's cool about it is she hypnotizes a variety of people. Everyone from all walks of life. And the cool thing about this is that she is not limited to any particular kind of person. Like, these are accountants, house moms, bankers, attorneys, and none of these people have any interest in ancient civilizations, Atlantis, the Sphinx, ancient Egypt. Lemuria, you've heard of that. Yet they go into incredible detail about what their lives were like in those times. And as she hypnotizes other people, there's perfect overlap of these stories. So there's no inconsistencies. And so what you're really getting is kind of firsthand eyewitness accounts of history. And if you're a fan of history like me, you know that a lot of history books are written by the victors or whatever. That's a common saying, which is true. But how often do you get to hear like firsthand accounts of, what it's like in World War II, or, the days of Genghis Khan or ancient Egypt? And they're really fascinating. So one of the gals that Sarah talks to the most is her friend Jen. Jen, Jen. And it's a really nice story because, so Sarah is a mom, right? She's got a couple kids. Well, she's about 50 or so right now. She's still young and spry. And so she has a couple young kids, and she go to this playground every day. I'm also looking where I'm going to take my sunset photo. I like these still puddles because they have a nice reflection. I may bring it over there. As you can tell, I've got many things going on in my mind at once. So she'd go to the playground with her friend Jen, who also had young kids, and they would kind of sit on the bench and just got chatty, right? But they would talk about fairly surface level stuff, Nothing wrong with that. You know how mom's gonna kind of hang out at the playground and, I don't know, talk about stuff they're doing with their kids, or soccer practice, or their favorite Starbucks new flavor, or whatever the fuck, I don't know. I'm not downplaying it, just like, surface level conversations. Nothing wrong with that. But her friend Jen had absolutely like zero interest or knowledge about Atlantis or Lemuria, which kind of predated Atlantis, or ancient Egypt, or the Sphinx, or anything like that. And at the time, Sarah was going through her own training with Dolores Cannon's method, the QHHT training. Because like me and millions of others, she was a big Dolores Cannon fan, and she kind of had a calling to do this. And she wanted someone to practice on. So she talked to her friend Jen there and said, hey, I got to practice this hypnosis stuff. Would you be interested in doing it? And Jen said, sure. And then Jen kind of immediately went to the trance. They didn't do it at the playground. They just, they have a little sit-down therapy session. And went into incredible detail about her previous life in Lemuria. And I'm not going to ruin it for you, but I'll just give you a few little details here and there. So she was like a princess in Lemuria, which was a matriarchy. So it was run by women, right? And it was idyllic. Everybody was happy. Kids were playing. And she talks in great detail about like what she's wearing, what the royal family is like, what the palace is like, how the water system worked there, how trading worked, and this and that. And then she goes into detail about how they would use like crystals to harness energy, to move objects, for all kinds of stuff, right? And how they had mastered the use of these crystals, and how then she got into how the Atlanteans would come over. The Atlanteans were bad news. It was much more of a patriarchy, much more warlike, and they wanted access to all these crystals that the Lemurians had. And they kind of laid siege on the city and ended up destroying it. And they captured her, the princess, after they killed her mom in this really violent way, and took her back to Atlantis as prisoner. And then she is like a prisoner for like 40 or 50 years as they continue to torture her to try to get the secrets of these crystals out. And she talks about Atlantis, and she ended up, escaping a few times, and what it was like going around the city, and there's a judge that's trying to defend her, that's trying to protect her, and she talks about walking around and all the various things in Atlantis. It's just super cool. And then she ends up being one of the key ones that ends up destroying Atlantis, because she knows how to use all these red crystals and stuff. I'm just skimming over a lot of stuff, and I'm sure this might sound crazy to some of you guys, but like, this is great, right? So Jen is just one of the eyewitnesses. There's many, many of them that Sarah talks to. It's just such a compelling story. And then after the destruction of Atlantis, you know, not everyone dies. Some of the ones that, the chosen ones, right? They were able to like leave Atlantis and take some of those secrets all around the world. You know, one of the main places was the Sphinx that was already there way before the pyramids. And that gets into our next book about the Sphinx. And, you know, they went to the four corners of the earth. They went to China, South America, North America, Europe, all over the place. And that's why you see a lot of the common iconography and a lot of the common building techniques in all these places. So if you're a fan of, you know, ancient civilizations and these sorts of things, these are the only books I've found that feel really accurate to me, because nowhere else do you get to hear these eyewitness accounts. The books are very well written. Sarah's a lot of fun. I recommend you watch some of her videos. She was on Robert Edward Allen Beta David Grant, or whatever his name is, and many other shows. She's very likable. She gives seminars and talks all over. Man, these sandflies are something else. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to take some photos, and I'll do another video later where I go maybe more into detail about the Sphinx book. It was one of my favorites. And the latest one is about Avalon, where she talks quite a bit about ancient druidic cultures and like how things moved from Atlantis into kind of medieval days and the Renaissance, and how some of these crystals were passed down through families in the UK. And man, it's just so interesting. All right, well, maybe we'll get some color here. I don't know. But that's what I do as a photographer. I show up with a good attitude. All right, guys, love you. And I'll see you in the next book review video. In the meantime, feel free to check out all my recommendations on the page. And I hope you find something that stirs your soul and opens your heart. Okay, love you guys. Bye.